Cold calling strategies, best practices for calls in 2025. Cold calling in 2025 still works, but it's unforgiving. Cold calling in 2025 isn't dead. It's just brutally honest about your targeting, your data, and your execution. When your list is sloppy or your pitch sounds like a generic telemarketing script, the phone exposes it fast. Average outcomes are still low by design. A 2.3% success rate means you're earning roughly 2 to 3 meaningful next steps per 100 dials, so there's no room for randomness or spray and pray. The teams that win treat calling as an engineered system, not a heroic activity. In this guide, we'll break down what good looks like now, how to build a repeatable cadence, how to run a modern cold call that sells the meeting, not the whole solution, and how to measure the right things. Whether you're building in-house or evaluating a cold calling agency for sales outsourcing, the goal is the same: make outbound predictable. The 2025 cold calling math and why phone still matters. Cold calling feels hard because it is hard. Typical connection rates hover around 16.6%, and roughly 80% of dials go to voicemail. So even strong reps spend most of their time trying to simply reach a human. That's why volume alone won't save a weak program. You need volume plus precision. At the same time, buyers haven't moved on from the phone. Research still shows around 50 to 60% of B2B buyers prefer phone contact at some point in the sales process, even if email dominates early touches. The opportunity is real. The standard is just higher because buyers are already educated, often completing about 70% of their journey before speaking with sales. Use benchmarks to set expectations, not excuses. A common activity benchmark is about 52 calls per day, with roughly 7% connecting and around 2% of total dials converting into appointments, about 1 meeting per 50 calls, before optimization and segmentation. Win before the dial: ICP, list building, and data quality. Most cold calling problems are actually targeting problems. If your SDRs are calling anyone with a job title that sounds relevant, you're forcing them to overcome bad fit accounts with heroics, which rarely scales. Tighten your ICP around the segments you consistently win, the titles that can influence a purchase, and the triggers that indicate urgency. Then make that the foundation for your list-building services. Connection rates are heavily influenced by data quality. When averages show 16.6% connections and 80% voicemail, that mix includes stale desk lines, generic company numbers, and incomplete contact records. A modern outbound sales agency approach prioritizes verified mobile and direct dials, accurate time zones, and clean role mapping, because even a small lift in connect rate compounds across thousands of dials. Treat your call list like a revenue asset, not a one-time export. Run routine audits for invalid numbers, duplicates, and role mismatches, and track list quality by source so you know which providers actually perform. When we run cold calling services at SalesHive, we keep the data workflow connected to the cadence so reps don't waste their best calling hours fixing records instead of starting conversations. Cadence is the strategy: persistence, timing, and channel alignment. In modern B2B cold calling, one-and-done outreach is just pipeline leakage. It takes about 3 call attempts on average to connect with a lead, and it typically takes around 8 total touchpoints across calls, email, and social to convert a B2B lead. If your team stops after a single dial and a single email, you're not being respectful. You're underinvesting in the accounts you already paid to source. The fix is a structured 15 to 21-day cadence that coordinates phone, email, and LinkedIn so every touch feels like part of one conversation. Practically, that means your cold calling team references the email you sent yesterday, your LinkedIn touch supports the same angle as your voicemail, and your messaging stays consistent across your SDR agency workflows. When phone runs in a silo, prospects experience disjointed outreach or duplicated outreach, which quietly damages brand trust. Timing is an execution lever you can control. Instead of guessing, block power hours based on your data and the prospect's time zone. Then rotate calling windows to catch different schedules. The best teams treat timing like a testable variable. Measure connects and meetings by day, hour, and persona, and then lock in what works for your market. Cold calling doesn't reward confidence. It rewards relevance, repetition, and a process you can measure. A 2025 ready cold call. Sell the meeting, not the product. A common mistake is treating a cold call like a full discovery call. Long interrogations about priorities and tech stack feel self-serving when the prospect didn't ask to talk, and they tend to stall momentum before you've earned the right to ask deeper questions. The goal is simpler: confirm relevance, deliver a fast insight, and secure a meeting where discovery actually belongs. Conversation intelligence research shows successful cold calls often sit around a 55% talk to 45% listen balance, with short, clear monologues that earn attention. In practice, that means you open cleanly, state why you're calling early, and deliver a tailored 20 to 40 second reason for the call that connects the prospect's world to a specific outcome you drive. Then you ask one sharp question to confirm fit and transition to the next step. Keep the close specific and low friction. Don't ask, "Do you want a demo sometime?" Propose a real calendar option and position the meeting as a working session to validate fit. This is where cold callers separate themselves. A confident, relevant ask beats a vague check-in every time, especially when buyers have already completed roughly 70% of their research journey before talking to sales. Common cold calling mistakes and how to fix them fast. Generic, product-centric scripts are a fast way to blend into the noise. Prospects are flooded with commodity pitches, so leading with features trains them to disengage. Instead, anchor your opener in the prospect's world, an industry shift, a role-specific pain, or a trigger, and lead with outcomes and proof points that match their context. Another costly mistake is measuring only dials. If reps are rewarded purely on activity, they'll burn through accounts with low-quality conversations, and the team won't know whether the real issue is list quality, messaging, skill, or timing. Track the full chain: dials to connects, connects to conversations, conversations to meetings, and meetings to opportunities. Then coach to the specific step that's underperforming. Finally, stop running phone apart from the rest of outbound. If your calling isn't aligned with your email and LinkedIn outreach services, prospects get disjointed touchpoints that feel automated and careless. A single, unified sequence, whether managed internally or through a B2B sales agency, keeps context consistent and makes every call feel like the next logical step, not a random interruption. Coaching and optimization. Turn calls into a system, not a mood. Once you have a real cadence, optimization becomes straightforward. You review calls, diagnose patterns, and update what's not working. The best teams refresh scripts quarterly based on real objections and win-loss insights, not on what sounds good in a spreadsheet. This matters because when the average dial-to-outcome benchmark is only 2.3%, small improvements in conversation quality create outsized pipeline impact. Build a simple operating rhythm your SDRs can count on. Weekly, review outcomes by persona, vertical, and sequence step, and pick one variable to improve: opener, call windows, or list source. Daily, run short coaching loops using a few recorded calls, one strong, one weak, so the team learns what good sounds like and can replicate it. Also, treat personalization as a baseline expectation, not a nice to have. Buyers can tell when a rep hasn't done any homework, and poorly targeted calls create negative brand impressions that spill over into email and social. The modern standard is lightweight but real personalization. One relevant observation, one tailored outcome, and one clear reason the meeting is worth their time. What to do next? Build in-house or use a partner in 2025. If you have the time, talent, and tech, building internally can work well, especially when your ICP is stable and your messaging is already validated. But if you're missing any of those ingredients, outsourcing can be the fastest path to consistency because it bundles process, coaching, data, and execution under one operating model. That's why many teams evaluate an outsourced sales team, an SDR agency, or specialized cold calling companies when they need pipeline now. At SalesHive, we run cold calling services as part of a coordinated outbound engine that includes email outreach, list building, and SDR outsourcing, with transparent reporting tied to meetings and conversion rates. Our teams combine proven calling frameworks with multi-channel sequencing, so the phone isn't operating alone, and prospects experience a consistent narrative across touches. If your internal team is stretched thin, pairing with a cold email agency plus a calling motion often creates a compounding lift in both connects and booked meetings. Looking ahead, cold calling will keep rewarding teams that are operationally mature. Better data, tighter targeting, stronger messaging, and faster feedback loops. The channel won't get easier, but it can get far more predictable when you engineer it around the realities of 3 attempts to connect, 8 touch points to convert, and buyers who arrive already informed. If you build for that reality, the phone becomes a durable advantage in 2025.